Manchester United just finished third in the Premier League and are in the Champions League again. And we're going to talk about the expectations with Carrick as the full-time manager, not just the interim, what this means for United and where they kind of go from here. Mila, your team is a rival team from across the street. So why don't you get us started with your expectations from United this season?
I think United need to shoot for a Champions League spot finish. Anything else would hinder the development of the squad. So I think they should be aiming for, obviously, to compete in the league for as long as possible, but that shouldn't be the be-all, end-all. I think making sure that you secure Champions League, that you have something to build on, something to draw in new players, is the most important thing for the team. And I think we need to focus visually on you guys just going deep in tournaments and being able to play as many games this season when you're trying to figure out style and personnel.
Yeah, agreed. Grant, what's your expectations for United in the Premier League in specific? What's the thing that you're looking for them to get to?
I totally agree with Mila. Champions League is definitely the priority. I don't think you want to be waiting until the last few games to guarantee that position. I think you want to be comfortably there, similar to this year. So I think regardless of the rest of the incomings that have to come in potentially, again, there might be one by the time this comes out, but I think all things considered, even where you're at right now, that should be the expectation. I mean, as crazy as it seems, because it's going to be his first full season, Carrick is the second longest tenured Big Six manager in the Premier League right now. So all things considered, when you look at it contextually, a lot of teams are going into a potentially unknown period, at least to start. So I think given the context of the situation, I think Champions League finishes the bare minimum.
Yeah, from the idea that Carrick is, like you said, there's Maresca and Xavi and Iriola that are coming into this helm, and he's got a 6-month head start, I guess. And I don't know if that means the expectation is necessarily changed or for him anything has changed. So I agree. You have to get Champions League. You have to maintain success week over week, month over month, year over year, and there's only one way to do that, and it's for clubs like United and Chelsea and City, it's consistent Champions League. If you're not getting that, that's not hitting the mark. That's honestly the bare minimum. And while we gave some teams shit for that in the past, in today's market, it's difficult to do. It's just not a given on any given year. And we saw even Liverpool, who won the Premier League, almost get bounced out of Champions League spots, and it took them to the last day, I think.
60 points isn't that convincing. That usually does not get you Champions League football, right, historically speaking.
No,
so
the bottom teams have risen a level, and so for the expectation, the United should be starting to take care of the bottom teams and keep themselves consistently in Champions League. It's the only way, realistically, they can get out of the debt that they're currently into. Champions League money matters. So I guess, gonna throw it back to you here, Grant. In terms of the cup competitions, right? United's back in Champions League. They're gonna have to compete and make it out of the first round of the other two competitions. What should be United's expectations in the cups?
I definitely think you're going to want to win a domestic cup. I think if we're talking realistic expectations, I don't think there's an expectation that you're going to make a deep run into the Champions League and potentially win it. But I still think the way your team is constructed, at least currently, with the attack that you have and the individual quality that is there, that can get you over the hump in certain Champions League games. So I still think there can be a run to be made there. It's kind of hard to quantify, but I think if you bow out in a respectable manner, like if you go out fighting against the top team and you're going, neck and neck with them right until the final wire in the quarters and you go down, so be it. But I think you're definitely going to want to win with some silverware this year. And again, just continue to build. You've been talking about it for so long where you just want consistency. You want to have some sort of foundation to build on. And I think a good cup run or two, stability, it could go a long way.
Yeah, we've seen the Premier League teams do really well in the Champions League, and one of the teams that has done well over the last 5 or so years is your team. Do you think that consistent Champions League success is a indicator into Premier League success, or do you think those things are separate and just the expectation for United in the Champions League differ from what it should be in the Premier League, or do they kind of come together and there's a little bit of a meeting?
I think that the Champions League success should come post domestic success. You should be able to compete on a domestic level for your league and then worry about a tournament like the Champions League after that, because the Champions League at the end of the day comes down to luck. Obviously you need to have technical ability and skill and tactical knowledge, but it's a knockout game for most of the tournament and anything can happen. Whereas the Premier League, I think this is the big talking point, is that in league in general, like, you have to be consistent throughout the entire tenure of the league, or as we've seen in modern day Premier League, you lose out on spots, whether it be getting knocked to a lower competition in Europe or just missing out entirely. And you've seen what that can do for the development. So obviously, yeah, you guys got to focus on Champions League, but it should not be something that the success of the season rides off of. Obviously, you want to make a good showing, and I think in every tournament you want to make a good showing. You don't want to get knocked out by a Grimsby. You don't want to drop points to a team like, I don't know. Hull, sure. Yeah. Any team that isn't up to par with you in the Champions League, though, like the easy ones that you should be winning, those are the ones that you want to pick up. I don't think anyone's going to point fingers if you get matched up against, like Grant was saying, a PSG or like a Real Madrid. If you drop points in the league phase for that, it's fine. But don't lose the easy games or the games you're expected to win.
That's true. The Champions League has made it so that the top European elite have an easier time to get to the knockout stages. You don't get those groups of death anymore. You don't get the tough Bayern draw twice where you got to go home and away. And so from that perspective, yeah, like, you got to get out of the league phase. And then I think my baseline is get to where Chelsea got last season. I think that United and Chelsea just flip swaps, and now for United, the goal should be what we were talking about expectation-wise for Chelsea in the Champions League, which was like, go decently far, like round of 16 would be great. And then if you get bounced by a team that is just clearly better than you because they've been building a project like a PSG or like a Bayern, by a little sting in the moment, like, the expectation should probably be there and thereabouts. And then you figure out the rest of the season in the Prem, and you, fingers crossed, get top four. Like, it's kind of it. But one of the main talking points that we'll have in terms of our managers is that it's relatively new. All of them first time for their clubs taking over as the full-time manager. For Carrick, he was interim, and so he just had to get results. Now we have to look at it in the inverse of, he's the full-time guy. He's got to implement his tactics, and while maybe last season with one game a week, he was able to do that to an extent, he's got some new players in, and clearly through preseason he's had a little bit of a tactical switch, a little bit. But in terms of the expectations for Michael Carrick, what do you think the expectation should be for him going into the season?
Yeah, I definitely think, just like we were just saying, consistency, finding a way to be able to translate the football that they want to do, but while also staying versatile in making sure that you're not too one-dimensional, in that you're not trying to just play transition football. Even though you guys have a strength in that, you need to make sure that you have another way to play, that you can beat a team that sets up tactically to counteract transitional football. You have to show that you can play with the ball a little bit and break teams down that way. It doesn't have to be like the main way you go forward, but that, I think, is the main thing to look at when judging Carrick this year. It seems the players like him, so that shouldn't be a worry. So tactically, and just being able to instill his vision into the team, which has been something that's missing from United since Ferguson left, is a big thing. And then obviously you look at some of your other past managers, and a lack of versatility is their downfall. So those are the two big things, is just being able to implement that philosophy in the club while also being able to stray from it if needed.
I don't disagree with that. Grant, you have anything else that you're expecting from Carrick?
Yeah, I just think the job he's going into this season is so much different than what last year was. He's coming in and almost trying to save the scraps that are flying all over the place and just
Right.
get everything together. Let's get on the same page and really just simplify things versus this year you were able to comfortably qualify for the Champions League. He has a full preseason. You've got business to get done. So I think particularly when it comes to that business, we've already seen based off of just Tielemans and Santos, which has gotten done so far. Like Mila was saying, you want to have options. You don't want to have to just be a counter-attacking team because now certain teams lower down in the league are going to give you more respect. Just play a low block, good luck breaking it down. You're gonna have to be able. You're gonna have to have profiles that are able to do that. So I think he's gonna be able, as a manager, to show off that versatility. Versus last year, given the squad you have, which was built for a specific formation, now it's gonna be a little more fluid, and I think he's gonna be able to show his managerial chops in that extent. He's gonna really be able to show what he's capable of at this level as a coach. So I think it's a big year for him. But I just think when it comes to expectations, it might sound like I'm trying to lower standards for you, but as long as everything doesn't explode and he has to leave because of how bad it goes, that probably means you qualified for the Champions League. That probably means that you had some respectable cup runs and you maybe even got one. So, in a simple sense, I think it's a positive scenario for him. I think that should be the goal.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue into the expectation slash goal. It's the biggest one if we were to write down a checklist and then if you hit every single thing, it'd be an A+ season. The first thing on there is just Carrick makes it through the season. United, we've talked about it through 104 episodes, but the chop and change and United going through, how many managers have we gone through since we started the podcast? Four. He's the fourth?
Ten Hag, Amarim,
Fletcher, and Carrick.
Carrick.
So, that's just kind of the goal is for him to make it through the season. Like, that's my checkbox one, my number one thing, my number one goal for United this season. Carrick makes it through the season, which to your point is probably because he makes a couple of the other check marks in terms of goals go through, which is either Champions League, a cup, or in the Premier League, just a good showing, which I guess we've laid out for the expectation of being Champions
It's
League.
so hard to really even say what that's going to look like because of how almost refreshed the league looks.
Yep.
So it is really hard to say what that point total is, what that league table finish is. It could very well end up being a situation where 3 through 8 is separated by a few points with a few games left. Like it really might end up being really tight, somewhat like last year.
Let me pose a hypothetical to you guys in terms of outside perspective. So United make a deep cup run. Let's just say they make a deep Champions League thing. They go far. They make it to like the semis, right? Like really lofty expectation, but they miss out on Champions League, finishing like 5th or 6th. Like, is that enough to keep him in the job?
I would imagine, like the way I said it at the beginning is really quite literally how I mean it. As long as everything doesn't blow up and just go to absolute shit, I think he'll be fine. Like, let's say you finish 6th, but it was right down to the wire and you looked good in parts of the season. I really think it's hard to quantify with just league position and where you exit in the cup. But I think as long as it ends up being a respectable showing, which is so hard to quantify right now, I think he'll still be in the job as long as there's signs of improvement and it's not stagnation. But again, I can't emphasize how hard that is to quantify.
I don't know. I feel like you'd be going backwards if you don't make Champions League this next season. So, like, then after that, what would be the goal? To make Champions League next season? And then it's like,
So. Yeah.
You're just trying to claw back. At that point, I think you just move on and try to find a manager that's able to secure Champions League every season and eventually build up to challenging for titles, which I think is probably the end goal in 2-3 years' time is to be challenging for titles again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think outside of the Carrick portion and just making Champions League, for me, I would care less if we got bounced early in the Champions League, if we made it again, because that's a different window and you get to spend more money and all that stuff. But in terms of the team as a whole, I'd like to see us become a little less Bruno dependent, right? Like that would be one of my main goals going into the season is Bruno Fernandes is phenomenal. And if he can lift your ceiling, that's great. Last year, he was the floor and the ceiling. And so if they can find ways where he becomes just that X factor, right? He's getting older in age. We shouldn't be relying on him week in, week out to get us 3 points or get us deep in cup runs. Like if he gets a night off, we should be able to get 3 points on any given night. Instead of it being like Bruno's not playing, like where the fuck are the assists or where the goal is coming from? Like what
Yeah.
Is a catalyst in a lot of ways, and he's been used as a crutch for many years. He's got to stop being a crutch at some point, and you have to be able to move on. Where eventually there will turn a point where he goes over the hump, and he is no longer as good as he is currently right now.
Or he leaves.
Yeah, or he leaves,
Yeah.
right? And you can't be that reliant on one person to continually get you to that spot. As much as I love him and I want him to be that guy, and he will, but you can't be that
I think
reliant.
you can make that exact same argument when you saw what played out with us as soon as Palmer got an injury and
Right.
he lost his form. So reliant on his ability, and like you said, it's much better if that's not the case. If instead, like you said, he can be that game breaker, but he can't be your floor as well, because especially
Yeah.
a player like Bruno and the way he plays, if it's not coming off, you need to be able to have someone else that you can lean on to give you something.
Well, the thing I think with superstars is that they're supposed to be consistent. So you know what you're going to get. Palmer, but prior, you knew what you were going to get week in, week out. Bruno, you know what you're going to get week in, week out. And I think the same applies to like a Rodri. Like, obviously, we're not a shit team without him. But the floor does raise when he's on the pitch because we're just infinitely better. Everyone becomes better. And I think the same can be said about Bruno and maybe a little less about Palmer just because of his role in the game. But that's what superstars do. They're going to be able to bring up everyone around them.
Right.
So, yeah, you want them to be able to play without the superstar, but that's what the best teams in the world have. They all have a superstar that raises the floor and the ceiling of their team.
Yeah.
It's just finding the next one, I think, is more so what you should be focused on as a club. It's like, well, yeah, we have Bruno, kind of the same situation. He's the same age as Rodri. Like, maybe we'll get him. You guys might have him a little longer. But you have to plan for the future. So who's taking over for Bruno once he's gone, rather than trying to make the team be able to float without him? Like, you need to be able to spearhead someone to be the next Bruno.
Like who is it? Manu. Like, okay, let's talk about that and the expectation of like a single player. Is there a single player that you're expecting for United this season to take a leap?
Diogo Dalot.
I it's funny. I listened to another podcast and they were saying that United, you only get so many games of crap play, and if you are bad for, let's just say it's like 6 games, your perception is just ruined. And that's kind of Dalot. Like every year, like he's steady, right? Like he gives you
been one of your players of the season,
right? He gives you steady, like kind of 6s, 7s, kind of like in that range. But like last season, there were a couple games in a row where he was like fucking diabolical, and then like the narrative behind him switched. But then under Carrick, he was awesome.
The bad is bad with him. I think particularly on the eye, he has some moments where it's like, what is this man doing playing at this level? Like you said, it doesn't take much to.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be more on display this season too. Yep. There's more games. And he is one of the main options.
I think based on what you have now, I think it would be obviously nobody's Holland, but Šeško, just in terms of output, I think it is a big season for him potentially to jump into a really reliable goal scorer, especially across multiple competitions. But I think obviously you just need to start with health and go from there. But I think just based off what we currently have, and we love attacking star power. So if he turns into one of those guys who could consistently get you goals in every competition, I think you're set up for success.
Yeah, he was really awesome in the second half. But the first half, remember there were people saying that he was like the flop of the season.
Hasn't played much. People are.
It was really weird. So to your point, like now he's definitely going to have the pressure. Like being United's number 9 comes with a certain amount that just gets laid on you regardless. You go through a streak of 3 games where you don't score, and you're going to get that. I mean, Holland gets that. Like, it just being a prem striker kind of allows the media to go crazy with it.
It only gets really bad though when your team is reliant on that. So I think a lot of that when Holland wasn't scoring was terrifying to City fans because we had no one else, and that's where you justify getting a player like Semenyo who's going to get you like 20 goals if he continues to improve. So if he's your main goal scorer, he's going to get ripped to shreds for not scoring every game. But you guys seem to have plenty of capable goal scorers in the squad, so I think that's great for his development. It's mainly just consistent minutes for him to develop.
Fair. So is he Šeško your expectation player?
No, I think it's still heaven for me.
Oh, okay.
I really like him. I've seen him live. I've watched him since he made the move from Arsenal to United, and he's been really impressive for how young he is and the position he plays. And I think that's just one to watch. If he can make big strides this season, Like, you guys will have a good center back for many years to come as long as you can keep him happy. And that's exciting. I do feel like center back, like, you guys are fine there right now, but it's definitely not a solidified position. None of those guys, they might have the starting spot for the year, but you can't guarantee that they'll be here and starting next year.
It's true.
So having has an opportunity to displace one of the senior members in the squad, and I think he'll take it.
I think you can make that same argument for Lenny Oro, right? And a guy who's been here a little bit longer. He's been the guy that we paid a ton of money for. Like, if he can take the leap, and then United next season don't have to go into the market and spend a gazillion dollars on a center back, like, that's the leap that they were hoping he would make when he chose them over, Madrid. I guess the easy answer for this is just Meno. And, like, we only saw him for 6 months last season, and he was one of the best midfielders in the league. And every time he gets a run of games where he's healthy and he's firing, like, he can... I think the expectation for me is he becomes that name where if he was playing for another team, you'd be like, oh, yeah, that's like 120, 130 million pound player, right? And for United, talking about, like, the stepping stone of, like, who's going to take over the mantle for United once Bruno's gone, like, Mainu's got to figure out what he wants to be, right? We don't necessarily know if he's going to be this, like, 6 or this 8 or 10. Like, we don't know what he is.
Sometimes it's not really up to the player either, though.
That's true.
I think that's a lot on the manager to be able to profile him, and he's in that young age where maybe you don't want to shoehorn him into a position that isn't a proper fit. But I think that discussion needs to be had this season amongst him
right, and,
like, the United coaching staff, is that exactly what position is this player going forward?
Yeah, we shouldn't. For me, that's kind of where the pairings go. Like, if you need to go into the midfield and spend money in the transfer market, like, we're no longer building it around Bruno Fernandes. We're building it around Kobbie Mainoo, who's the best partner for him.
Mm-hmm.